right for the last few. We've always had some type of a weather thing that shut us down. But we all got pretty toughened up over the last couple of weeks. I don't think there's too much more that the weatherman can do to us to shut us down anymore. But just as a reminder, if this is your first time here, the way that we operate our legislative copies is that both Steve and Jason will give us updates, and then we'll open it to the floor for questions. We always have the third Saturday of the month. So in February, we'll have the next meeting, and that'll be at the Farm Bureau, downtown Harlan. And then the one in March, we're hoping that we can host it in Elkhorn. We're going to see if we can get that to work out for us. And then April's always up in the air. It just kind of depends on where they are in the legislative session as to if we have a copy in April. But so with that, I'll turn it over to Steve, and we'll get the update started.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see everybody here. First off, I have to talk about the weather. Last year, a few weeks into session, I slept on the ice in my hotel and broke my ankle and spent the rest of the session, had to have surgery, spent the rest of the session with my knee on one of these little scooters rolling around the Capitol. So talk about being careful this week. The hotel where I stay, the Holiday Inn there near the Capitol, is just one solid sheet of ice that they just haven't been able to get off or get removed. And so I've been, to say I'm moving slowly on the ice this year would be an understatement, because I really don't want to fall and break anything again. So hope everybody's been staying safe. Roads have just been really, really difficult up in Des Moines with all the snow we've been getting. The crews are doing a fantastic job, but they've just been very difficult. So we've had a very robust beginning to the session. Folks probably aware of the AEA reforms that the governor proposed. Let me make it clear that that was not a legislative initiative. That was a bill that came from the governor's office. We actually saw it at the same time you did. And I'm on the education committee, so I'm spending a lot of time listening to school superintendents, listening to school personnel on the AEA issue and what we need to do. But just so you understand, here are the facts driving the need to take a look at some change. So we have something called the Nation's Report Card, which measures our student performance. And in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2022, I don't think they measured in 2020 or 2021 because of COVID. So this is the best apples to apples comparison we have. Iowa ranked 30th in the nation or worse on 9 of 12 assessments for our special education students. And this is the same assessment provided to a representative sample of students across all the states. Our state assessment 2023 showed a 41% proficiency for students with disabilities compared to overall student results. We've been put on a watch list by the United States Department of Education as needs assistance, and they're going to begin monitoring us in the fall. The federal government is. So we also spend about $5,000 more on average per special education student than other states do, but yet our results are far less. We're also the only state in the United States of America, the only state that mandates that the schools have to take the money, the area education agency money, they have to take it, they have to give it to the area education agencies. We're the only state that operates that way, and then they have to use the AEA for their services. There's not a great deal of oversight in that system at this time. It is also, I think, a fact that can't be denied that the average salary package for the AEA chiefs is over $300,000. That is more than the director of the Department of Education and more than the governor gets paid. So the governor's proposal, and she did amend, there's an amendment that I think makes the bill much better. With the amendment that has come out, the governor proposes that money that is now mandated to transfer from the public school to the AEA is mandated. At this point, that money will go to if this bill were to pass, the money would go to the public school, and if the public school chooses to do the same thing that they've been doing with the AEAs, they can do that. They can do exactly what they're doing right now. If they want to contract with a different AEA, because they think the services from that AEA might be better, they can do that. If they want to bring it in-house because they believe they can provide those services more efficiently or get better education results, they can do that. If there were some private services available that could do it better, they could do that. So it gives the ultimate control public school. We're not mandating under this bill that Des Moines is going to mandate to the individual public school districts what they have to do. It's totally up to them. So understand, to me, that's ultimate local control. We're saying to the public schools, if you want to do business as usual with your AEA, you're satisfied, you can do that, go for it. If you want to go with a different AEA, you can do that. If you want to bring it in-house, you can do that. So we're giving them all of those options. And then we would, the oversight for the department, for the AEAs would transfer to the Department of Education, where we would actually could have meaningful oversight and accountability for them and for the performance. So I don't think it can be disputed that we have to make some changes. Now, whether these changes are the best that we can do, or whether there's other changes, I am here to listen, and anyone that wants to give me their input, I'm more than willing to listen, because we're going through this process. We're trying to listen. We're trying to do the right thing and improve services for our special education students. Nobody's trying to get rid of AEAs. As I said, if business can continue exactly as usual, if the school district is happy with their AEA services. And in the governor's first bill, it was going to remove the media services. In her amendment, that changes. Media services can continue to be provided by the AEAs, and so it's completely up to the school district. So I'd love to hear your input on that as well, once we get to questions. The other thing I ran this week, which made some news, was a bill to stop universal income programs in Iowa. There are several of our bigger cities that are giving folks $500 a month, taxpayer money, to do absolutely nothing. It's going to cost over $1 million. They've already spent over $800,000 just handing somebody $500 a month. I think universal income programs are socialism on steroids and are an assault on our work ethic, when we have thousands and thousands of jobs available in Iowa and employers that can't find people that are willing to work. So I will do everything in my power to ensure that universal income programs will not continue in Iowa. That's kind of I would say, how the first couple of weeks have gone for me and for those of us in the House that are looking hard at the AEA proposals that Governor advanced. With that, I'll turn it over to the Senator.
Good morning, everybody. Steve covered the AEAs very well, and I agree. We're in line on this. I have received some numbers. That's why I have the same numbers from the same source. I've gotten some numbers from just texted and emailed to me that are different. I'll just throw that in there, that I see there are sources of numbers that are different. I'm going to be looking to verify those. I'll share it with you too. So that we want to boil down to the real numbers on everything. So we're talking apples and apples when we're doing policy, but mostly I'll listen. I'm going to listen on that. It was a shocker to the Senate too, when all of a sudden we got the bill. So the first version was not good. But it did, there was a little bit of a push to get committees going, organized, to get subcommittees going on a few other bills, and the week's drama on AEAs kind of set that back. All of a sudden we're worried about this. So the other things that we're going to talk about, we do have the task force, the boards and commissions bill. Following last year's alignment that I ran for the Senate, we knocked the executive branch, the cabinet level offices in the governor's office from 37 down to 16, I believe. That was a large bill. Part of that bill was to take a look at our 245 different boards and commissions that regulate occupations and issue licenses and permits. So we have a report on that. That's gonna start running here shortly. I've met with multiple chiropractors, seem to be one of the job occupations in this area that have really reached out to me, so I've been talking to them. Every year, and I just finished a newsletter on this last night, that'll go out probably this week, election integrity. I'll be working with the House. Bobby Kaufman and I are going to sit down and just see what we want in the bill, what we want out of the bill, and just come together. We've got a good relationship there. My main focus on that is making sure that the voter registration list is as accurate and clean as possible. And again, I've done this on welfare reform. I've found multiple areas of the state. They use real-time verification, identification verification. Some of these, like like LexisNexis, Equifax. It's the folks who make our credit cards and debit cards work. They already know everything about us. I think it'd be pretty handy if we knew. So it'd be so simple for the registration. Do you live where you say you live? Are you the legal requirements? You got to be 18 on election day. You have to live within the precinct. You can't be a felon. You need to be a citizen. These are such easy things to do. They have the technology to run them through overnight, send back a report that we could send to the counties, that, hey, these folks don't match up all our criteria. We already have a process to keep the system clean. It just isn't very fast. It's all manual, so I'm going to work on that. Ranked choice voting, we'd like to make sure it doesn't come to Iowa. That's really more of a scheme to try to game the election system, and we don't want to get that started here. Other states have, and we're seeing that with those. I did jot down, just to remind people, I have the same committees. I should start this way. My name is Jason Schultz, I'm your state senator. I live in Northwest, in Schleswig, and I farm in Northwest Crawford County. Senate District 6 is Ida County, Crawford County, and Shelby County, and just to the east, Carroll and Audubon. And then 2 townships right down there by Avoca, so in town and next door. That's the district I live in, and 65,000 people live in that. I chair state government, which is the catch-all for quite a few different topics. Then judiciary, commerce, workforce, and ways and means. I'm not on education, which may be the main topic today, but I'll be looking to listen. So with that, we'll get to questions.
I should probably say that too. I apologize. I'm Steve Holt. I'm in District 12, cover District 12, which is all of Ida County, all of Crawford County, and about half of Shelby County down to in Harlan. And I'm the chair of the Judiciary Committee, and I'm also on the Education Committee, Public Safety, Appropriations, and House Government Oversight.
Okay, so like I said, we'll open the floor to questions now. Please raise your hand. We'll get you the microphone, and we'll do our best to keep the pace up here. But I've got 2 people in the back and myself, so we'll make sure we get microphones going back and forth up here and back. Well, I've got one lady back here who's raised her hand.
Steve, you mentioned taking the new governor's bill, the amendment that should make to the ADA bill, and you said that the money would be given to the schools that had to go back to ADA, that the schools could keep that money and use it for whatever they saw fit. What is that dollar amount, do you know, or approximately what that means for a school district?
I have more.
Okay, so to answer your question, I should have put a finer point on that. They can use that money for special education services, not for anything. So that money that would normally go straight to the AEAs, the school could either continue the same relationship, give that money to the AEAs, they could contract with a different AEA, they could bring it in-house, but the money has to be special education. It can't be used for other things. So let me make that clear. And then, yes, I do actually have the dollar figures for every single school district. Unfortunately, I walked out of the house without that. But I can certainly email it to you. But the numbers are readily available on how much money we're talking about for each school district.
From memory, no, I don't have it with me. From memory from writing the newsletter just this weekend here, I think the total statewide AEA, excuse me, budget was $526 million, I think, 0.6. Let's call roughly half of that state and half federal. But the parts that aren't perfect, 50-50, are property tax. So they also have, so there's state money, federal money, and property tax money in the AEAs. It seems to me it's, I want to say $256 million is federal from the numbers I had. Part of what caught people's eyes when apparently in the governor's office they were looking at this, and then we started looking at it to see what they're talking about. The numbers that I have, and I totally understand that one line item can support something more than just the title, but administration and management is 13.5, and I think that's $71 million. Special ed or student services is 40.8, and then support services to provide those, the special ed, was 52 or so. some administration's in that other 60%. So 40% was there. I've already seen numbers that seem different than that, so now I have to go verify numbers and see who's coming from what perspective, because they all might just be the same numbers being told from a different direction. But those are the numbers I remember in general.
And some additional numbers, 62.8% of AEA funds are focused on special education, and there's 19% overhead that's being spent. Those are just facts. And we also have a breakdown by individual school district, how much Denison Community School District gets. We have all those numbers. I apologize, I forgot to bring them with me.
So everyone can hear, it seems to me, so the 3A schools that I'm dealing with, and so Harlan, Carroll, and Denison, they're a little over $1 million apiece of flow-through money to go to AEAs. I get down to, I remember looking at Charter Oak, trying to think of what or Schleswig, what the smaller schools, and it's a few $100,000.
So is that then, say that just that million, does that overhead cost come out of that million, or is that overhead cost already out, and that million that school gets would be just to get services provided to their students?
No, that overhead that we're talking about is the AEA, within the AEA budget. So the school district has to turn down that money over to the AEAs, and then the AEAs, their administrative costs are coming out of that.
Okay.
All morning we've been playing a little bit of musical chairs because of the sun. So if you want to sit over there, that way, I saw your head. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Quick question on CAD redemption. When are you going to either straighten it out or stop?
I've got something. So we've had a year, not quite, but almost a year since we changed things. I was interested to find out. So the first number I heard is that there's 35 additional redemption centers across the state, and then I talked to I talked to somebody in the wholesale, the beer wholesaler, and they said, well, we're picking up 67 or 68 new places, or delivering to, picking up from the redemption. I'm trying to, it just happened Wednesday or Thursday, somebody said, well, they had to register, redemption had to register with the DNR. So we've got a request in to try to get an official number. I walked in, at first I heard no new redemption centers opened. And I kind of walked up to, on the calendar, walked up to, the session thinking, well, this might be the year we get rid of the bottle bill. If tripling the revenue doesn't give us more redemption centers, you may as well get rid of it. But somewhere between 35 and 68 are the numbers I'm hearing of new redemption around.
Not in our area.
I agree with you. I agree with you. So I'm trying to figure out why Denison. There's a gentleman there who was running kind of a part-time redemption before. I thought he was going to take off and be an empire, but I gave him all the information about the drop-it trailers that we had. We had showcased here once. I thought we were going to have something. So we're watching, and I need to verify that we're even getting any new redemption. But I'm hearing that we do.
If this area, we either go to Council Bluffs or Carroll, you say Walmart, but most of the time that's not first council.
I hear you. I'm to the point where if this doesn't work, I'm ready to vote to just end the program. But
excuse me for interrupting you. I'm not saying we don't want all that garbage on.
Right. But we really, we knew this was going to take a little time. It's going to take, I would say, a year from now. If in fact we're hearing that there's that many new redemption centers opening, then in fact it is working. It may take a little bit longer to get to every area. But we really incentivized massively, and drop-it is another opportunity where it can really become much more profitable for folks. So we're going to have to evaluate and see if it's actually working or not, and then make a call from there.
Good morning. Actually got 3 bills all tied to education, but I want to share a story around the AEAs, kind of on that piece there. So AEAs provide a lot of services, and sometimes we forget about how important those other services they provide are. I'm in my second year of teaching, and I had an opportunity to teach in Northwest Iowa last year and worked with the Northwest Iowa AEA in a small school district. They have rolled out through the CTE program, so Career and Technical Education, looking at a CAPS program, so Centers for Advanced Professional Studies, giving students the opportunity to really take it beyond the classroom and into the community, even meeting off campus. Because the AEA housed that program, there were 11 school districts, rural school districts, that currently participate in that program, and it was possible because of that massive collaboration between those districts as well as business and industry. So definitely, I'm fearful of what changes can do for career technical education along ag, business, health sciences, family and consumer sciences, industrial tech, computer science, and all those key areas that could be affected as kind of a friendly fire kill because of that. The next one, this for the Senate, I talked to you briefly, Senator Schultz, about Senate File 2019, around competitive grants for career and technical education for the CTSO. So, and what that is, it names FFA only for their CTSOs. In Iowa, we're mandated to have CTSOs for all the CTE programs. So unfairly naming out FFA, we forget about COSA, we forget about FCCLA, we forget about Skills USA, FBLA, BPA, all those get forgot about. So either include all for inclusivity or don't do it at all. But it does provide additional assistance for districts. And then the last one, Representative Holt, House File, and this is your area, 234, teacher pay. Great bill to see. I know the governor came out with a number initially of 50,000. Current bill says 40, but it does nothing for support staff. They're kind of those unseen here. We know teachers, we talk about teachers, but we forget about those support staffs that provide so many supports for those individuals that are on IEPs, 504s, and districts struggle to hire quality and keep quality trained staff. So, thank you.
Been having a lot of conversations on teacher pay. Obviously, I support increasing teacher pay. I'll definitely take that message about support staff back. One of the things we're concerned about, we're trying to figure all this out. So one of the concerns is you start teacher pay at this certain level, and then depending on the school district, people could go for a long, long time after that without getting a pay raise. So there's some concern there. There's also a concern about, I've heard from teachers that have been in the classroom for a long time. Maybe they're 3 or 4 years from where they could retire. They haven't gotten a pay raise in years because they're maxed out in the system. And so I've addressed that with the governor. These would be people, in a lot of cases we want in the classroom that are some of our very best teachers, but, we're almost incentivizing them to go ahead and retire as soon as they can because they'll never get another, pay raise when they max out. I think that's a problem. So there's a lot of things like that we're discussing in connection with the teacher pay, and we'll see where it goes. And I'll definitely bring back the support staff issue. And then as far as the AEAs are concerned, I agree. We just want to make the system better, and I think, allowing the school districts the ultimate flexibility to either continue their current relationship or have some flexibility to look elsewhere, sounds like an excellent way to approach it, because obviously we do have some issues with those scores, and we have to do something. The status quo can't continue, but definitely the priority is to make it better. So, thank you.
Hi, thanks for being here today. I know you're very busy men trying to learn not only the bills, but the AEA structure itself, because it's very complicated. And when Senator Grassley established it 50 years ago, right, he did it for efficiency's sake. Our small schools can't afford what they're providing right now. I should have introduced myself. I'm Kim Wise, so we farm outside of Avoca, and I've been in education for 30 years as a classroom teacher. I worked in the AEA, but I've also been a board member for 12 years. So I our impact on our general fund, our HSCW, is going to be dramatic. So what I want you to take back and think about is the NAEP that you cite in your paper here, and that she's citing is given to very few students in Iowa. So there's 75,000 about IEP students in the state of Iowa, and 250 took it. So that's such an, I mean, I took statistics a long time ago, but I think that that's probably not statistically significant.
Could you say that again?
75.
I lost track. When you got to the end, I realized I wasn't following correctly.
The NAEP is not given to all kids. So there's 75,000 students about with IEPs in the state of Iowa. 250 kids took it. The other thing you have to consider when you're talking about the NAEP is that it's not the same state to state. So and I'm not the most educated person in this room, so please speak up if I say this incorrectly, but the state of Iowa, its goal is to get kids off of IEPs. So we exit them when they are able to perform at their peers grade level. That's not how other states work. They keep their kids on IEPs. So yeah, they're performing great, and ours are performing great, but they're not considered IEP students any longer. So it's not apples to apples. Of course, we have kids with disabilities. They're comparing their kids that have overcome their disabilities. So that's not fair. So I think that the pause needs to be, let's find a test that we can really cite is worthy of making these drastic consequences, not only to our small schools, but eliminating 1,000 jobs in the state of Iowa where you can get local access to your ADA. And now, after this happens, we think it's going to, well, I don't even know what ADAs are going to look like, but right now you can walk into the office in the Boca and get help. You can try calling the Department of Ed. I have. They're busy, so it's hard to get a voice for your student here in Harlan through somebody in Des Moines. I have other points and I have forgotten. Oh, two other things. One thing, when you say a percentage goes to oversight, I'm not sure if you mean administrative costs, which code issues already, you can only have 5% administrative costs, and ADAs are audited, and they go through accreditation visits every 2 years. So it was a shock to us too, right? Our budget's been cut for several years in a row, and we thought our accreditation, we get excellent results, our audits come clean. So for her to make all of these claims, and it surprises you, it surprises everyone, right? And as far as oversight, you have elected officials from Shelby County that serve on boards of education for the AEAs. Boards of AEAs are elected. That is oversight. I mean, just like a school board, we go through all test scores. We go through budgets. We decide. You're electing them. So there's never been complaints about the system. You can look around the room. I know there's a few people here that there are the faces, and they're the people that are no longer have jobs, and they're the people that are working with their kids one-on-one every day. So I get saving money. I think it's a great thing to do, but we've been saving money. You've given the ADAs and schools less and less and less and less money to do more and more and more and more. And if God forbid anything like a school shooting happens, are you going to, those people aren't going to be here. Those mental health people that show up by 100, the hour, minutes after it happens, they're not going to be here. Our Greenhouse ADA is already the size of New Jersey. I already travel over 2 hours to get to some of my schools. I go through Des Moines to go south, another half hour. And that's not even my furthest school. And I live in Oakville, which is kind of central. One last thing, and then somebody else knows my remote. I served as a science consultant for the AEA. Up until this year, I was the only one to serve the sites of New Jersey. Yesterday, I worked during a snow day and heard from 4 different districts, teachers, a superintendent from ISD, and a principal about science questions. Who's going to do that? I'm instructional services. There is no part of her amendments or talk of continuing instructional services other than schools may be able to decide they want to provide instructional services if the DE approves it and enough contract. I'm not sure how y'all manage that and who's going to be my boss, someone from the DE. I'm not sure, but one example of how we can serve students with IEPs is in the general ed classroom where they spend the vast majority of their day, and that's their regular ed teachers. And one thing that I've been involved with, and Harlan has been involved with, and other districts that you serve have been involved with, is what is called the Science Writing District, and its approach to teaching science. And it lasted 20 years in partnership with many, many districts in Green Hills AAA and the University of Iowa. What that showed was this approach to teaching science for students with IEPs raise their science scores, raise their reading comprehension scores, and raise their math computation scores. That approach, you can ask those teachers, changed the way that they teach, and that some of them haven't had PD for 20 years. Who's going to provide professional learning for teachers if not instructional services? You can contract those people. We have a new curriculum for science called Open Science, and it's $10,000 per district to get a PD support. And that's not always like ongoing. They'll come in for 2 days, do their PD, and then they go home. And the literacy, the Iowa Reading, so I didn't know I had this much to say. The Iowa Reading Research Center is fabulous and great and has done great work. They're now going to provide instruction to teachers online on the science of reading outside their school day. I don't know about you all, but teachers are overwhelmed the way it is, and that science of reading is very in-depth, deep learning. It is, I was a classroom teacher, and it's very, very, very difficult. And then support to teachers will come from where? VEs, they're not going to come out. They don't have that many literacy consultants. So they're going to learn online, and then schools are going to support that. So this overhead you talk about, we are going to have to come up with it out of our general fund to do all of that and to replace media, digital learning, everything. Anyway, I can go on and I won't, but this is happening way too fast. This needs to be paused. This needs to be studied over a year or more, and we need to make thoughtful decisions. There's so many unintended consequences. And your small districts are going to be hurt, and your families are going to be hurt, and the kids are going to be hurt.
Okay, just one quick comment. Other than the military, one area of industry that has more acronyms than anybody can even imagine
I'm so sorry.
is the school district. So try not to use acronyms if you can. Okay, thank you. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm not going to try to go through all of it. I will say a couple of things. Superintendent brought up to me what you described, that it wasn't an apples-to-apples comparison. The data that was provided to me disputed that in fact it is the same representative sample in Iowa. That number you quoted is the same across the state, so they believe that it is an apples-to-apples comparison. I would also dispute that we have cut funding to schools. That's simply not true. I mean, you can go look at the numbers. Education spending is at an all-time high in the state of Iowa. In the 10 years that I've been in the legislature, we've never cut, not one time, have we ever cut funding to education. We've increased it every single year. Now, we haven't increased it the amount the schools ask for because everybody comes to us and says, if you don't increase by this amount, the world's going to come to an end. And we balance budgets in the state of Iowa, and we have to fund nursing homes. You have the floor now, may I respond, please? Because you made a statement that isn't accurate. We have not cut funding to education, to schools in the supplemental state aid. Yes, there have been cuts to the area education agencies, that's a fact. Because, again, you know, when we have AEA chiefs that are making $300,000 plus a year, more than the Department of Education head, more than the governor of Iowa, that's a problem. And I don't think that there's oversight when, no matter what the performance is or the standards are, or what's happening with our scores, the schools are just mandated to hand the money over to the AEAs. So, having said all of that, I still, we want to do the right thing. And one of the reasons that the amendment came out for the governor's bill so that those media services can continue to be provided is because that's one of the things we heard from schools was that they wanted to be able to do that. So if they want to continue to do that with the AEAs, they can. If they can get it cheaper out in town from a local business, they can do that instead of being mandated or what have you. So again, I'm very positive to the idea to leave it up to the school districts and allow them to take that money and either use it with the same AEA they've been doing, or if there's a better way for them, then they can do that. But, again, we're going to listen to everybody, listen to all the concerns. And I will take back your point about the NAEP and the fact that, you're saying that other states are removing them from it. That's a point I'm going to come back and get some information on. So, and that's one of the things I brought up. A lot of times, for instance, in the United States, we're always compared, they always say we're doing so poorly on education compared to other states, but we're not reporting our numbers in this country the way that, countries. We're not supporting or not reporting our numbers in this country the way that other countries report their numbers. And so, as an example, we have public education, we have everybody going to school, we report sort of fair numbers, and other countries aren't doing it the same way, and so it makes us look like, our education system is bad. Maybe that's not accurate. So I will definitely take that information back. Thank you.
I guess we're in line. Again, the couple notes that I mentioned, my understanding of AEA funding and the history that I'm familiar with from being down there for several years, the AEAs, this is the information I'm given, so I'm going to throw it out there. This is my understanding. I'm open to feedback so I can go back and verify it. But AEAs, I explained where the money comes from, but the state aid portion of it is equal to the K-12 state aid. So when we do 2.5% to K-12 schools, the AEAs get that also in the state portion. Now, in so many sectors of our lives, we're familiar that percentages are a rich man's game. So if you're getting, we know the story. If you have somebody making $100,000, $1 million, and a person in that same company making $10,000, well, if they all get a 3% raise, one of them goes on a vacation to the Mediterranean forever, and the other one goes to Starbucks a couple more times. So the situation is then if we've got a statewide AEA situation of $526 million the last time, and we go $2.5 million, you've got a lot of money there. More compared to I did a little bit of looking. The state aid to Denison, I think, was $18 million last year. Carroll, I think, was closer to 30, if I remember right. I didn't go to Harlan here. I should have, because this is where I'm coming. But obviously you can imagine there, that 2.5% means a whole lot more to the statewide AEAs. So what the legislature started doing several years ago was putting annual cuts in the final appropriation bill, the AEAs, to allow them to still grow in net funding, but not as much as the 2.5% would do. And so there, I'm not accusing you of saying that that's what you meant, but we have included budgetary cuts at the end of the session, but never until Keystone AEA is the information I was given. Until Keystone, through a mathematical little formula thing, they actually hit a negative net appropriation this year. Every other AEA has been growing in budget size. Now, whether it's enough or not, that's all a policy appropriations question, but that's how that funding has been handled over the last years. Now, ma'am, I am curious, and I'm happy to take the other perspectives back, and like I said, other employees have sent me similar information. I almost think we're working off the same documents here. The whether or not the National Assessment of Educational Process is apples to apples, I can go do that. There has to be some measurement, but we're also being told about an achievement gap. I mean, where my understanding is you're simply taking students in the same grade. Fourth grade is the example they give us. It must be a traditional year test. And we have gaps between those with disabilities, and my understanding is that means they're not in speech or any of the special ed services. But the students without any disabilities are scoring 40 points higher. And I think, my understanding then, when I get that information, is that's in the same classroom. That's not, so we're not comparing against other states who measure differently. Am I correct in that? And I'll just let you answer and we can move on. So I'll give you the final word. I'm not trying to argue. But can I put faith in the achievement gap? Let's put it that way.
Okay, so you go ahead and answer.
I will, I sure will.
Okay, and then
There is an achievement gap. So what you need to know though is that, again, our goal is to exit kids with IEPs. So if they don't have a gap, they're no longer on an IEP. So there's going to be a gap, right? Because those are students with learning disabilities, and once they can perform as their peers, then they're taken off the IEP.
Okay.
So, and a gap is a real thing, for sure, yeah. But we can close the gap, make it smaller, like, help them accelerate their learning, and we do that. Maybe there are other ways to measure progress. That's not the way.
Thank you.
And I hope I said that.
I'm going to jump to another bill real quick. It's Senate Study Bill 3072, and it has to do with, I think they're just changing the wording to add charter schools to be allowed to participate in co-curricular and extracurricular activities within the public schools of their district. And one thing that I was looking at is that there's a word in here that says that they may complete an agreement with another school or district or non-public school providing eligibility of its students with interscholastic activities. What we're seeing with the passage of the ESA bill is that there are some public schools who are now not allowing the private schools to continue those relationships. And so I'm wondering, do we change that word may to require, or is that something that you're aware of? Or, because I feel like if the private schools were allowed to do it previously and now the public schools are saying no, what is their reasoning other than, oh, well, you're taking away our ESA money, so we're not going to allow your kids to, and that's doing a disservice to the kids. And our main focus has always got to be the kids. And so I'm just curious as to if that's something that's on your guys' radar to correct. And then I know this one particularly only says co-curricular, extracurricular, curricular, but then it also, I think, applies to the sports side. I personally have been affected by that, with switching my children, or my one child anyway. And I didn't switch the other one because he is so involved in sports, and I had to leave him in the school that I don't want to leave him in because of that. So I'm torn at that because they used to allow it and now they won't. And what's the purpose other than just they're mad?
I'm not in education, and we're only on the
I know.
second week, so I haven't heard about it, so I'm going to be a little bit off script, I guess, to say. I am familiar with local public education schools ceasing their agreements and their help of local privates. At Denison is where I'm hearing it. In fact, now we've got Zion, Lutheran, well, now it's Unity Ridge. Actually taking kids down to Woodbine to the Ignite, I think down there. I don't even know if that's a result of it, if they were attracted down there for other reasons or not. I'll have to look at the bill. I am familiar with it happening, and my understanding is there was a little bit of an emotional reaction, like, well, you're on your own, be on your own. So, but that's just a little bit of hearsay. I've heard from some folks who work in the public. So there is no requirement there. It should be brought up since it was a large subject here just a minute ago. AEAs also support privates. I mean, I want to throw that out so you know that I know that now that private schools have come in, and rural schools probably far more than urban schools wouldn't be able to replace those employees. Private rural schools would probably be even in a tougher spot. Just so you're aware of that. I will look at the bill. I don't know that we can turn around and make the publics do that though. I suppose we can. You're paying taxes, you should have those services.
So with the money that they get per student, I'm just gonna get estimates from here quick. each student, what I've been told is that they are allotted $19,000 per student. And with the ESA money, $7,600 is being taken to go to private schools, correct? So the public schools are still retaining like $13,000. They're still retaining a good chunk, whatever that dollar amount is, there's a good chunk that's still being retained by them to teach and educate and service these children of my taxpayer dollars. And they're saying, well, because you took X amount away, we're not gonna let you use our services at all, period. And so it's like I'm paying for a service with my tax dollars and being told, nope, you can't use it because part of it you're taking and using elsewhere. You have to use 100% of it here or you don't get to use anything.
I don't think that's 100% correct, but I think you're pointed in the right direction. The ESA bill did as a counter that the $7,600 doesn't come from the school. I mean, it won't go there in the first
No, but it
place.
doesn't get to
It goes
that,
here.
like it used to.
Now, the flip side is that we made the student at a private, if they live within the district, their property tax dollars then do go to the public district. That was about $1,200 per student who went. The rest of it, the federal, to get up to 19,000, which is a little higher than I've heard, numbers keep going up. That would require property tax, state and federal money, and I'm not convinced that the federal would stay if the student leaves. So I'm not sure they get that much. They do get property tax, $1,200. I know with Kemper being the largest private school in the Senate district, the Carroll Public was going to pick up about $1 million every year that they weren't getting before, and I haven't looked at the numbers yet to see how many people moved from public to Kemper, so I'm not sure how that offset. But there are some tax dollars, your property tax dollars for sure are still going to that school. I'll talk to the folks on education and look at the bill. That's what I can offer right now.
Also, it should be noted in the first year when somebody goes to uses the school choice program and goes to a private school, the first year that student leaves the public school still gets full funding. We did that to try to keep the budgets consistent for the schools. That first year they get the full amount, so the state's sort of double paying. That first year we're paying the education savings account. We're also giving that money to the public school. Then the second year, that amount of money would leave the public school. It's $1,200, as the senator said, would remain. So.
I'm going to stand up because I want to see your faces. I'll just real quick on AEA. Family support is also using AEA, and I don't know if that's something that's been brought up, and there's definitely a difference between special needs and special ed when it comes to family support. I have referred many families for speech therapy, in particular Down syndrome babies, whatever the case is. So it's not just in the school system, it's in our rural areas and home visits from birth to 3. So, and I watched the other night, your update, Thursday night, when you were stuck in the hotel about accountability. I am asking for accountability from the IUB. They have not had a meeting, to my knowledge, a monthly meeting since August. And they have no plans to have monthly meetings anymore, the way it sounds. They were also not present. There's not 3 of them present at the hearing, many days at the hearing in Fort Dodge. So I'm thinking maybe a violation of Iowa Code 2024 because they're not having any public meetings right now. Okay, so again, I've been here for 2 years, 5 months, fighting this pipeline. And the fact that they want to use eminent domain on my grandmother's 124-year-old farm now. But I'm exhausted about talking about that. I am going to talk about drought. The drought map is huge. The entire state, with the exception of a little bit on the east side and a little bit on the northwest side, is in drought. And if anybody wants to see this, then pass it around. IUB has had no interest in how much water the Summit Carbon wants. And it's not just going to be Summit Carbon, it'll be Wolf too if they get this. In June, I wrote a letter asking about what kind of water they were going to use. No request. They had 2 or 3 meetings the IUB could have asked. So all of a sudden, we find out there's 13 permits applied for DNR. And they have cleverly hidden Summit Carbon Summit in the middle of these. Galva SCS Capture LLC. Goldfield SCS Capture LLC. Shenandoah SCS Capture LLC. They're all under the city's names that the ethanol plants are in. An estimated 478,296,000 gallons per year is what they're asking for. This is above and beyond what the ethanol plants are using. In August, Mr. Rastetter said that ethanol plants were going to grow by 25%. If that's the case, then they will need an additional 119,574,000 gallons. Ethanol plants already use 3.5 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of ethanol. So the 4.5 billion gallons of ethanol produced in 22 would have used 15.75 billion gallons of water. We don't have it. There are wells that are either dried up or drying up all across this state. There is one farmer in the middle of the state, I'm not even going to mention the name of the town, he's going to have to sell. He has no water. He can't take care of his livestock anymore. He's going to have to drill a new well for them to live there, but he can't take care of his livestock. We are going to be like California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, begging for water somewhere, when they're already thinking that they should pipe water from the Mississippi to Colorado. This is serious stuff, and we seriously need to take care of this. I don't know who the DNR is responsible to or accountable to, but they need to understand that there are wells drying up all across this state. One last thing from me. There was a United States Geological Survey that came out just last week that said 75% of the United States could face potentially damaging earthquakes. And Iowa is in the 5 to 25% possibility. The New Madrid Fault would definitely affect us. We don't need a carbon pipeline in the ground to be ruptured with an earthquake. Thank you, guys.
So we looking to enhance that, or are you going to let that apply?
If they want to reply, and then I can address. Either way, I can do it, they can reply.
Okay.
So Mary Powell, we own land in Shelby County, Iowa, 117 years of our family. Just want to know what is in the plans to help stop the carbon dioxide pipeline from taking our land against our will by eminent domain. They want to put it really close to the well that is our only source of water for the farm. And when I talked to someone about that, they looked me in the face and they said, we only need to be 2 inches from your water, from your well. They testified in the public hearings that their pipeline can have pinhole leaks that can go undetected. It has been said in the research and in the busting of the CO2 pipeline in Satarsha, Mississippi, that if you mix water with CO2, it creates carbonic acid, which then destroys the pipe. So they can have these undetected leaks going into the water. It's going to turn the water of our land, make it more acidic, and change the minerals in it to arsenic, which we're not going to know about the health issues of that until after we've been drinking it and we become sick. We're also hearing that Summit is proposing or saying that the only people that are in danger in the event of a pipeline rupture is those within 75 feet of the pipe. Even though we know from the pipeline that went through Navigator, when they publicized theirs, it's well over 1,800 feet. In Satarsha, Mississippi, their plume traveled several thousand miles. So they're between shutoff stations on this pipeline, it is 20 miles. If it takes out a valve station, you have 40 miles of hazardous CO2 pipeline at 2,000 pounds per square inch of pressure. Rupture, it is going to go far beyond 75 feet. It is going to wipe out the town of Harlan if it happens there, the town of Westphalia, the town of Buck Grove. It's very serious, and we'd like to know what is being done in the legislature to stop the pipeline
stop eminent domain, hold the IUP accountable, and make Summit accountable for information that they are sending to the public that is not accurate.
Well, I'll just be completely frank with you. Everybody that's been following this fight knows that I've been in the middle of it. They know that I have done everything I can do to fight against eminent domain being used for these CO2 pipelines. It's not constitutional. The Iowa Constitution says that for eminent domain to be used, it has to be for public use. This is a private economic development project. It is not for public use. Public use are things like roads, highways, oil pipelines, natural gas pipelines that are essential services for human survival. That's public use. Taking CO2, sticking it in a pipeline, going hundreds of miles and burying it in the ground, by no definition that's logical to me, is public use. Additionally, the Iowa Code states that it must be convenient and necessary. So you put those three things together: constitutionally, public use, statutorily, convenient, necessary. I believe that the Iowa Utilities Board lacks the constitutional statutory authority to grant eminent domain for the CO2 pipelines. I testified before. There was a group of about 10 legislators that intervened in the Iowa Utilities Board hearings and testified on behalf of landowners, and I said exactly in more detail to them what I just said to you. I ran a bill last year to try to put even stronger protections for landowners against the use of eminent domain for the CO2 pipelines. It passed in the House with bipartisan support. It was not taken up in the Senate. And I know Senator Schultz, let me make clear, and I don't want to speak for him, but I know how he feels about eminent domain is how I feel, but the Senate was unwilling to take up the bill. And we have other legislation that will be released this week that myself and other legislators have worked on, again, to try to stop eminent domain and take some of the authority from the Iowa Utilities Board and give it to the legislature that is answerable to the people in elections on this issue. I'm not under any illusion, and I'm not going to try to tell people sitting in this room that that's going to pass, because, the Senate wouldn't take up the bill last year. Why would they take up the one this year? I'm not even sure I can get it through the House, to be frank with you. But I've done everything I know how to do. One of the reasons, if you saw any news, that I sort of made some headlines flipping my endorsement for Ron DeSantis to Vivek Ramaswamy, was because he was the only candidate that was willing to stand up against the use of eminent domain for the CO2 pipelines, because he cares about the Constitution. So I don't know what else I can do. I'm continuing to work with other legislators. I'm with everything you said 100%. Again, for me, it is the use of eminent domain. It is not constitutional. And if we allow private economic development projects to take other people's land, then we have no private property rights in our state or in our country. And George Washington said it best. He said, property rights and freedom are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. And so that is why this is such a fundamental constitutional issue. I'll continue to do everything I can, but I believe that ultimately this is going to be decided in the Iowa Supreme Court. If the Iowa Utilities Board chooses to grant eminent domain for these pipelines, which I do not believe is constitutionally or statutorily legitimate, but if they choose to do that, then I believe that I hope that this will end up in front of the Iowa Supreme Court, and potentially even the United States Supreme Court, where an egregious decision called Kelo versus the City of New London watered down the federal constitutional protections for private property. So that's where we're at. That's as honest an answer as I know how to give you. I'll continue to do everything I can.
I'm very glad I got to talk to you when we first came in the door. The water angle is a new angle that I haven't heard of before, and I'm glad to hear it. I won't repeat everything that Steve said, because I agree with it. On my part of the Senate, I'm not the only one who wants to do something about it, but there are not enough of us who want to do something about it. I've mentioned before, so I'll try to be consistent tell today's audience. So I was Commerce Chair and tried to bring a bill out to help, and support switched, I'll put it that way. I thought I had support to get out of committee, found out I didn't, so I couldn't get it out there. The next year I was assigned, I'm still on commerce, as I said. I was actually on the subcommittee with Mike Clemish to try to get something out and have a vehicle that would survive funnel, and so we could work on something. And I'm afraid both, that was a new experience. Both sides actually said to kill the bill. So that one didn't work. And as we've mentioned, my father is on the list of eminent domain potential properties. So if I fail on this, I fail him too. So that's going to be a painful deal. I think this is also going to I think it's going to the U.S. yet. But the more you get the word out, I appreciate you doing that. I wrote down here, I didn't know they weren't having monthly meetings. If they're going to start hiding from the public,
They've already hidden, which means they're meeting in private.
then I'll be looking into that.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention also the water issue. That's been brought up to me some months ago, and I've been talking to lots of folks at DNR. I brought it up to a lot of folks about the water situation, so that's a very valid, absolutely a valid point when we're talking about this deal. And follow the numbers, folks. I'll just leave this out there and you can decide whether the dots connect. So Bruce Ratstetter, who's the gentleman with a lot of money that's behind the CO2 pipelines, visited Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago a week or so ago. Right before the primary, he endorsed Donald Trump, and then they both began to take sort of pot shots at Vivek Ramaswamy, who had come out strongly against the use of eminent domain for the pipelines. You guys can choose whether those dots connect or not, but the bottom line for me is that it is a fundamental constitutional right. I'm going to do everything I can, but I believe it's going to end up with the Iowa Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court. That's where I think it's going.
All right, so we're kind of getting near the end of our session here. We've discussed the CAM redemption, we've discussed AEA issues, pipeline issues. Is there any other quick issue coming up?
Yeah, I'm really concerned about election integrity. You know, the U.S. Constitution gives that to the state legislatures, so huge responsibility of yours. I appreciate what you already said about voter rolls. I think that's huge. How in the world are we still allowing people to register to vote the day of the election, and how fast can you kill that with fire? And then the other thing is, you know, what we saw a lot of the swing states do during the shenanigans was they thought they had good laws in place, but they had secretaries of state that were on the other side of the aisle who changed the rules unilaterally. The legislatures were not conservative enough and strong enough to rein them in, and we had a mess. So, you know, your opportunity is this year to make sure that those laws are airtight so that we don't ever have a rogue Secretary of State who can change rules and end around you guys. So I hope you're working hard on that, but the specific question is about same-day voter registration. How is that still a thing?
There's a little bit of a federal component to that, that we just can't move unilaterally. However, we can do some things about it. So I mentioned the real-time identification there, and then we're going to be talking to the House about this. I mean, so they're going to bring ideas. These are going to be mine that I'm going to be pushing. Along with, you'll see in the newsletter that comes out in the paper here probably this week, underneath the general statewide voter registration list, you have the same-day registrations. I mean, it cannot be hard for a computer to simply identify, here's a universe of people who changed or created a registration on election day. That batch of files can also be sent to the real-time verification. Not instantly, so those, but we're going to find out. I think we're going to find out here shortly in the year just what is going on, if there is a problem or not. And currently, I'm not totally sure we're going to be able to make them provisional ballots, but I think I got a plan to find the data. Our Secretary of State, I've had an up and down relationship with. He's a Republican, but a statewide office holder. Last year, we started the pre-session meeting with him defending Eric, electronic registration. That's a multi-state, and telling me how good it was and how it wasn't a George Soros thing. Well, by the end of the same session, he was trying to take political credit for getting us out of it. Because I told him we're getting out legislatively, whether you do it or not. This year, when I brought up the real-time verification, I actually invited him to take credit for the idea, to do a pilot project without a law. I mean, folks, if you don't care who gets credit, then things can get done. He's talking to the vendor for Elsevier, I believe, that's the LexisNexis subsidiary. It turns out they have a product on the shelf right now ready to do it. They just never thought to do it with registration. So I think this is something we could have a fast turnaround. First on the statewide, but then if we get information there that looks like it's usable and leads us somewhere, I'm going to try to get same-day registrations. The other provision in the bill that I'm going to be bringing over to the House to see if we can get it work together is to get rid of the drop boxes in front of courthouses. Those are not federally required. They were you'll see, I'm not a believer in the COVID pandemic. I think it was an overreaction for political purposes. There's no reason to have those. Those were a state emergency deal done by the Secretary of State initially, and then since we couldn't get rid of them fast enough, we put protections around them. We're going to get rid of them. We don't need them. Yes, I do. And we have already eliminated harvest balloting and strangers handling even individual absentee ballots. We're doing everything we can when evidence like that happens. Sometimes, and I keep telling, Sandy Salmon's kind of a research leader on this. She does a wonderful job, a senator from just the other side of Interstate 35. Like Sandy, we can't do it all in one shot. I mean, at some point you got to change the system, let the system take the changes, then changes. You can't do it all or it'll collapse. So we're working on it. I'm glad you brought up election integrity.
And I would say, in addition to everything the Senator said, we've done a lot of things in the last few years to tighten the integrity of our elections. There's been a lot of good work done by Jason and Bobby Kaufman, a lot of things, get rid of the harvesting and all these things. We've done a lot of great stuff. I'll tell you my personal belief, I don't understand being able to vote 29 and 30 days before the election. I think we ought to have same-day voting, period. What happens, 2 weeks before the election, you've already voted and something horrific comes out about the candidate you voted for. It doesn't make any sense to me why we're doing this, and I think it opens up a lot of opportunities for fraud. I think we ought to have same-day voting, and we only should have absentee ballots for folks that legitimately used to have them. When I was growing up, when I was 18 and 20, there was absentee ballots for military, there was absentee ballots for people who were infirmed and honestly couldn't get to the polls. But now it's almost, I hate to use the term lazy, but it's like, I want to lay in my bed and be able to vote. Well, if you're not motivated enough to vote for the sake of your country, to get off your backside and go vote, then I don't know. I mean, I just think there's a lot of opportunities for fraud when you have weeks and weeks of early voting. So I would favor voting on the day of the election like we used to do it, because that is the day of the election. And I would restrict absentee ballots to those who legitimately need them like we used to do. I think that is ultimate voter integrity from my perspective.
Thank you, Randy Nelson, Irwin, Iowa. I'm going to speak again to election integrity, as Mike did. I see where there are other states that allow changing of party or registering day of, but their requirements are that you're stuck for years if you do that. Wouldn't that be also a useful way of dealing with the situation?
I'll wait till I get the microphone so I listen. I'm not aware of other states that do that, but I'll look into it. Mostly, I just think you need to make the decision before the election. I So our caucuses just happened here. I'd like to make sure nobody's, and I don't care which side it is, nobody's playing with the other side's candidate process. I want everyone to be grown up and straight and honest. I just leave other people's systems alone. I can look at other states and see if they've done that. I'm not against it. If you, voting to register should be a rather significant life decision. I mean, I'd like to think you take it seriously enough. And here, I'll say something, politicians aren't supposed to say things the crowd doesn't like. I bet you're not going to be in favor of this. I have always, do you all remember seeing on TV when, it was back in George Bush, whichever's war, the first one. The first time Iraq had a vote, and they literally put their finger in permanent ink, and it was a point of pride to walk around and show that you got to vote for the first time in your life. I've always been attracted to that idea, but I'm guessing you're not. But if your thumb wouldn't come clean for 1 month, I don't care if you vote absentee, early, same day, you did it once and you can't do it again. That'd be a nice way to do it. But otherwise, I'll look at that, Randy. I'm okay with it. I've got no trouble thinking if you can't register in the 364 other days of the year, I just don't know why we have to bend over backwards for people who don't take it seriously enough. And part of the trouble, we have a representative that we were at the reception for the Iowa Tourism Federation from all across the state, and I sat at a table with Cindy Golding. She's been an election official for a year. I mean, a precinct worker, not a in an office worker, but a precinct worker, and she's Eastern Iowa, and she said there's people coming over with, she believes, photocopied lease arrangements and just proof of residence. And she says, I know they're fake, but they meet the law, that day. So we're going to look into this. And I do honestly think if you do the provincial real-time verification, even if you do it a week later here and you find out that, hey, we got a whole lot of fraud going here, that'll bust the doors open and we can fix a lot of things.
Okay, so we've reached the end of this session. Thank you all for coming. A reminder, first of all, in February.
It's okay. I just had a clarifying question, but it's okay.
Well, no. Just try to make it quick.
No, I will. First of all, thank you guys for being here. I think this is outstanding that you're here to listen to the people. So when you said that, like the roughly $1 million for the AEA budget that a school district could get, that's like an example of a 3A school, that can only be used for special education funds. Is that what you said? I just want to make sure I understand, because my children are gen ed students, and we had a speech concern with one of our daughters, so then we asked the speech path to screen them. Their gen ed teacher got support from the speech path. So is that still going to be an option if the school district uses the money?
I think I know what you mean, sir. I think I'm tracking on that.
Yeah, just so we still have that gen ed support.
My understanding, I understand that completely, that yes, that there are services outside of special ed, and you don't want that $1 million to be funneled only to that and lose what's not special ed that we're currently getting. My understanding of the amendment being written, meaning we can't look at it in writing, is that's the intent, is that all services that are currently there will be, and I think what you meant and how I took it, because that's how we're hearing it there, is that $1 million will still go. It's just, it can't go to K-12 salaries or classroom expenses, or that money has to go to what did go to the AEA before. They just have the option to contract with somebody other than the AEA for the exact same purpose. That's my understanding. And the way I would support it.
Yes, agree. I apologize. I used the wrong term. It would be used for the same thing that the AE services currently could be used for pay raises or something of that kind. It would have to be used for the same services. That's my understanding of the amendment. We haven't seen the details yet.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So again, February, between now and February, make sure you pay attention to Steve and Jason's newsletters in the paper. Also, Steve Steve has his social media posts that he puts up, Jason. They also have forms up here you can use to reach them. They are very responsive. So, you know, of course they're busy too, but they are very responsive. And finally, I came across something earlier this week. It's more of a federal law than a state law. That's why we didn't bring it up here, but I wanted to make sure you were aware of it. Since we are a rural economy, the U.S. Department of Labor just issued a final rule last week that will force you to treat some of your workers as employees rather than as independent contractors. And what they've done is they've put in a statement that says, if they are economically dependent on the check that you're giving them, they're an employee. You can't have them as a contractor. So keep that in, you know, check with your accountants, check with the folks around you, but keep an eye on this. I'm sure there'll be a bill introduced to change it. But right now, as of, this came from ABI, it's kind of like a local business group here in Iowa that I follow. So this happened just last week. But if they are considered to be economically dependent on the payment you're giving them, they're an employee, not a contractor. Okay? So yeah, check that out. That's all the information I have. It's just a really short blurb that I got.